Hi, my name's Caroline Beckett and I'm the Vicar of Brightlingsea and I'm currently self-isolating.
My name is Andy Griffiths and I coordinate training for the Diocese of Chelmsford and I'm working from home.
And together we are at a distance, rethinking Christian leadership.
So, a while back we were commissioned.
Well, you were commissioned.
Okay, I was commissioned. But I spread the load by asking you to co-write it with me. I was commissioned to write a short book about Christian leaders as community organisers.
And we have written about 90% of the first draft.
Yeah, and then we've sort of put that entirely to one side, and we're using what we've written so far for this series of one-to-one conversations.
And we really hope that you'll get involved by emailing us. My email is revcarolinebeckett, all one word, all lowercase, @gmail.com.
And I'm at randomlyandy@live.com. Obviously, we'll be kind of adapting as we go along, and Caroline and I have both been honest with each other that neither of us get any of this technological stuff at all, but we'll be doing our best to be honest about how this is all working out with social distancing and self-isolation. We'll be talking to and about Christian leaders. So I guess we should start with what we mean by Christian leaders. We're using that term rather than ministers, because a lot of people think minister just means a vicar. And the reality is that we're all called to minister to each other. Leader is a community organising term, and we're going to borrow that one.
So in community organising, a leader is basically anyone with followers. If you've got no followers, then you're not leading, you're just going in a direction. And many of us are leaders without realising that we're leaders. Others of us can learn to be leaders if we care about something strongly enough to want to make a change and encourage others to help us do it. So it might be worth just for a minute thinking about the things you do for God. Are there times when you've had an idea or suggested a change and people have gone along with it and gone along with you? Or maybe you help to run a group or lead a ministry in your church, like perhaps hospitality or music or youth work. Maybe you're a lay minister or a priest or a vicar or a curate or a chaplain or a dean, an archdeacon or a bishop, whatever name or title you hold. Maybe you're a leader might be an archbishop. Maybe you're a leader on social media. Maybe you're a leader in your workplace with the help of God. Or maybe there's something you really, really care about that is actually going to make you want to be a leader. You just don't know it yet.
Whatever kind of leader you want to be, community organising is going to give you tools and understanding for the task. And it all starts with beginning relationships. The base unit of community organising is the one-to-one conversation. And everything else, and all good leadership, comes from that. In church, when we think about following, we tend to picture Jesus walking about Galilee, which is quite an active male picture. There's nothing wrong with that. But when Jesus ascended, he passed leadership to us with the help of the Holy Spirit. And leading for us might look quite different.
So in community organising, there are basically two kinds of leader. There's a positional leader, which is somebody who is officially in charge of something. So that might be somebody whose job it is to lead, for example. And then there are the relational leaders. And they're the kind of person you really want to follow. So, for example, if they're going to an event, then you know loads of other people will show up too, just because they're going. And some people will be the first kind of leader, but all of us can learn to be the second. And in community organising, that's the most important kind of leader. And you can be a leader in all kinds of different ways. You can be a leader without walking, without even leaving your house. The ministry of those with disabilities has much to teach us about this. I have ME myself, and there were times when I had to lead in my workplace and my family and even my church from my bed. That was only a while for me, but for others it's more permanent. But Christian leadership is about the quality of your relationships. your relationship with God and your relationship with others, and about who and what you care enough about to want to take action on. So let's start with Andy. How did you get involved in community organising?
So in 2016, about 3 days after the EU referendum, I stopped at a corner shop on my way home. The bloke behind the counter was looking a bit shaken, so I said, "You okay?" "Not really," he said. Man just came in and said, "We voted leave, so now you've got to leave." The man told me he'd come in every day, and if I didn't leave the country, he'd glass me. "I've got brown skin," the guy said to me, "but I'm from Ilford. What does he mean I have to go home?" So I stayed with him for a bit, and he tried to persuade the police to come, and that wasn't easy, but eventually they came. And then we tried to persuade the police to log it as a hate crime, and they said, "Oh no, it's so much paperwork, we'd rather not." And I got angry.
I'm not surprised.
And because I got angry, getting angry is the point, really, a lot of the time, isn't it? It's what makes you angry that will make you active. So a colleague and I, and actually it was my colleague Gemma that was the one that's really good at this stuff, we put on a sort of anti-racism campaign and a neighbourhood fun day and brought the community together and did some stuff with our local Islamic community and went into some schools. And before I knew it, there I was engaged in community organising and encountering the group Citizens UK, which is Britain's biggest community organising group. And it was changing the church I was the vicar of. It was changing what I do in my job, or what I did, and it changed my life as well. To the point that I'm no longer simply appealing to Christian leaders to get involved in community organising. I'm arguing that Christian ministry is community organising, properly understood, and that in the present moment it would do ministers good to see their role as that of community organisers. Part of my role is coordinating the training of new ministers. We sometimes call some of them curates. And I want to move to a point where curate training is mostly an apprenticeship in community organising in the power of the Spirit. Caroline, I know you've been involved in community organising for a while, and I know you've just become vicar of Brightlingsea not very long ago. So tell me about that. How radical a change has it been for the people of Brightlingsea, community organising vicar?
Well, they had a little sort of hidden radical streak, I think, before I came. Here's what someone said to me when I was appointed. They said, "We've seen 2 churches close already in this town, and we don't want to be next. We know we need to do something radical. You're it." And something radical, I guess, is one way to describe me. I possibly look a little radical, but I wasn't about to go bursting in and turning over the tables. Well, not at first anyway. During my interview for the post of Vicar of Brightlingsea, I'd been quite clear that if they chose to appoint me, we wouldn't be rushing into radical front-led change overnight. Instead, I laid out a year of relationship building, listening, discovery, so any change began relationally with God and with the gathered people. Stamping prefabricated programmes over congregations, a bit like cookie cutters, never seemed right to me. It destroys the existing shape of things that are created by the intersection of people and place and season, and it makes everything uncomfortably transactional. It becomes about sort of filling your slots in the rota and recruiting rather than transforming lives and discipling. And I often think about gardening. I'm a rubbish gardener. If you look out of my window now, you'd see my garden is basically lawn and a tree. But other things are coming up in my garden, because when taking over a garden, you can just rip out everything and start over, and you can stamp your style on the space, and maybe not everything you introduce is going to thrive. Or you can wait a few seasons and you can see what comes up, what's already good, what grows well in that soil. Unfortunately for me, that's a lot of thistles, but there are also some really beautiful flowers coming up as well. And during a parish vacancy, often there are these little seedlings of vocation and exploration, and they kind of poke up tentatively towards the light. And as a new vicar, if you're not careful, you can just stomp them flat in a matter of weeks. So shoes off, holy ground. And it's in that spirit that we're offering you a model for how ministers and other Christian leaders might want to see their role. Not as a blueprint to follow come what may, because the collateral damage of doing that is frankly unacceptable, but just one way to garden.
So there you are, gardening as the relatively new vicar of Brightlingsea and a pandemic strikes. How's self-isolation going? How are you managing to run a parish from your house, Caroline?
Well, it helps that we've already got the network of relationships built. So I've had my year of listening, I've had my year of conversations. In the first couple of weeks I was in post, somebody drove a car off the road and through the lich gate and into our graveyard and flipped it. So we have already some experience as vicar and parish group and what have you at dealing with some disasters. But what we've basically put in place over this year and a half is a network of trusting relationships. I've got to know people and where their strengths lie and where they would like to be working for God and what they'd like to be doing, where they see themselves, and actually some strengths in them that they didn't know they had, and some leadership coming up and coming out of things. And actually they've been quite excited that I'm not the sort of vicar who wants to do everything. And initially, I think possibly that was a little bit intimidating for some of them or a little bit alien. But as we've gone on, all these vocations and ministries have sprung up. So we've now got a youth team, so I don't have to worry about all of the things to do with youth work being done by me, because it's being done by a team of people. We are building a pastoral team and they're actually being trained at the moment. And although their training's been called off, they're actually very actively engaged being pastoral, using what they already know, using the networks and the relationships they've already got. And there's a lovely network of people phoning each other up, checking each other's all right. We've got a scheme working with the local council to vet volunteers so that they're safe to go around and do things for people who are in self-isolation, because we've got to think about the safeguarding angle. So people are having to provide things like character references and so on. So we are being quite organised and conscientious about it. But it is about...
That's important, isn't it? Because a lot of well-meaning projects that just say, put cards through lots of people's doors and say that you'll do things for them with no safeguarding aspect at all. And that's going to take us to terribly dangerous places in 3 months, isn't it?
Well, I think it could do. I think for the most part, volunteers are really well-meaning, and for the most part, it will work because people are compassionate and amazing. But there are always people who are scammers who will take advantage of that. And on the other side, there needs to be some safety for the volunteers, because if you go to someone's house and you're by yourself and you're doing things for them, then again, you haven't got a witness to say that you've done the right thing, and accusations could be made against you. So it's really about protecting both sides and doing it in an organised way. And when we talk about community organising, and sometimes it's easy to forget the organising bit, but actually that can be the really truly hard work, is to build these quality relationships. But actually they're public relationships, they are professional, they're accountable, and we hold each other accountable for the actions that we say that we're going to take. And safeguarding people does need to be at the heart of it, because once you start really listening in a community, then some very vulnerable groups of people will trust you with their stories and their worries. And that's what's happening here. So we've got people filling out next of kin forms in case they're taken into hospital, so that somebody will contact someone and somebody might feed their pets. And people are actually quite frightened. On the other end of it, you've got volunteers champing at the bit, desperate to do something. We've got the food bank in the middle of it all that we're still running and still feeding people, and massive increase in the people who are arriving because jobs have been lost and livelihoods, and people aren't getting the income that they need, and so that's just pushed them below the poverty line. So all of that in the mix means that actually the church is at the centre of quite a lot of organising, and I'm having to do it from my living room, and really lean on the relationships that we've built over the past year and a half, because I've got amazing people out there who are doing all this, who are ringing the bell, the church bell, We're ringing at 9, 12, 3 and 6, which are the Catholic hours of prayer and the Anglo-Catholic hours of prayer, so that the churches, various churches in the town who haven't got a bell, have got that marker, and we are all praying together as a witness to our community that we haven't forgotten them, that the church is open for candle lighting with safety precautions, and that we are praying for them. So that's an important presence as well, I think.
And you've been really good at partnership, haven't you? Notably with your local council.
So we've worked with the local council, we've worked with the Royal British Legion, with the Royal Naval Association, with a wonderful group of people called the Autumn Centre who take care of our older folks, with the food bank, with all of the churches. We have a church called the United Church, which is Methodist and URC. We have our Catholic Church, my lovely colleague Father Mark. We have the lovely Baptist Church. And then there are all sorts of other people who represent other organisations who are just getting involved. There's the lovely Brightlingsea Business Network that our local councillors have been coordinating with. So we are all pulling together.
Fantastic. And I happen to know you've also written a poem.
I do that occasionally, yeah. One of many.
Can you read us your poem?
Oh, go on then. I'll see if I can find it. Hang on. So it's the poem was thinking about Sabbath, was thinking about the fact that actually, as a society, we are not equipped to rest. That we have pushed rest to the side. And in the Bible, there's this fascinating bit where God's sort of talking about the fact that you haven't given the land a rest either, that you haven't given your surroundings a Sabbath. And so this came out of that really, and out of reflecting what are we going to learn from this really tragic scenario that we find ourselves in. So it's a sonnet, and it goes like this. For years our land has groaned beneath the grind of work, of pounding feet, of churn. For years we stopped our ears and would not mind the gentle voice that urged us all to turn from endless slog and strain that warps and rends the sinews of the spirit, towards rest. The Sabbath's breathing wisdom God intends for human flourishing and the land's best. Now cafes rest, deserted, and the shops, the bank, the bustle, bargain, building, bar, commute's hot haggling hustle, it all stops, forced into stillness. Now we breathe. We are. Such tragic loss of love, of breath, to prove how much we need to rest, to breathe, to love.
Beautiful. So that's the end of our first conversation.
Please do get in touch with us before the next one, when we'll be explaining what community organising is.
That's right, and we're going to be saying that community organising is a tradition, a set of tools, a rule, and a process.
And then over the coming episodes, we'll be taking the 5 stages of community organising. Organising, listening, planning, action through public storytelling and ensuring people have a seat at the table, and suggesting how Christian leaders can live them out, in general and in a pandemic.
Thanks, Caroline. Let's hug.
At a distance.
And cut.